Welcome to the Nerd Party.
They can travel anywhere in time and space.
Right. This is gonna be fun.
Off we go into time and space!
Welcome to Time and Space, the Nerd Party's dedicated Doctor Who podcast. I'm Jessica Nunn.
And I'm her husband and co-host, Phillip Gilfus. So I've been reading a Doctor Who book that you've been reading, or that you read and that you reviewed at a prior episode in Library in the TARDIS. So the Second Doctor Adventure in Hollywood. I'm still not through it yet, but I'm near the end. So I'll probably have more to say when it's finished. But it's interesting. It's not bad.
It doesn't feel like a Doctor Who story.
No. I feel like the characterizations are really good of the Doctor and Ben and Polly, but it's sort of almost... And I don't know, I keep struggling with how to describe it, because I don't say, like, well, is it too violent? But I'm like, I don't know. There's even old classic Who's that are violent, it's a little bit more ray guns and whatever, but people, die, whatever. But I guess, like, they don't drop, GDs and, all that stuff. And
yeah.
So it's a little more sort of, I guess, like, it's in a different genre of...
Yeah, it feels like
it's not even a film noir. I guess more like Untouchables, kind of.
Yeah, sort of a James Patterson thriller kind of thing, rather than a Doctor Who story, in my mind.
Yeah, maybe it's the mashup genre, so, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think it's a little long in spaces, but it's, on the whole, not bad.
Yeah.
So, bad and not bad. I started reading the Bill Hartnell biography by his granddaughter.
Ironically enough.
Yeah, which I think was, if I'm not mistaken, maybe I am, but I think that was the inspiration for Adventure in Space and Time.
Oh, right. Yes, okay.
So, but of course she's, interested in talking more about him, not just him as Doctor Who. That's certainly not irrespective of how she knew him and experienced him, but it's very interesting the way it's so that's sort of my Doctor Who reading.
Okay.
Yeah. But that's not what our topic is today.
It is not.
It is the month of April, the fourth month, which means...
the Fourth Doctor.
Yes. So as usual, we are using our inspiration for this topic from Richard Carrier's video of the Doctors. And so we'll be posting his Fourth Doctor video here in the show notes, so you can watch and be entertained by his great research and work that he's putting into the series. So.
Yes, although I've got to be honest, lost a little respect for him when he said he didn't like K9.
Yeah, and he also had some choice words about self-respecting fans and what episodes we should know.
Yes.
So we just don't respect ourselves.
We feel properly schooled.
Yes, and shamed possibly. But
Possibly
anyway.
shamed.
So, it, of course, as always, talks about the new Doctor and the new series and whatever, and I thought there was an interesting talk about how, and this makes sense intellectually and maybe in other organizations, but I suppose it doesn't often happen in television, and that's where you have, showrunner or producer or whatever you want to call it, transition, but they actually stay, so you actually have a right seat, left seat ride with the new guy, and so you sort of had the Third Doctor folks, and then you had the incoming Fourth Doctor folks, but, the video was...
the Shadow Doctor.
Yes, exactly. But the Richard was making the point that the first couple Fourth Doctor stories sort of have a Third Doctor feel, because it's still the Third Doctor folks. So... Yeah,
which seems strange, like a strange choice.
Right.
Like, I get the idea of having a transition like that is really a great idea.
Right.
But when it means that the Doctor himself doesn't necessarily have a chance to find his footing as much, that's got to be a difficult thing.
Yeah, because, and I guess, I'm trying to think, in some ways, we sort of haven't had a clean break in New Who, because Stephen wrote so much under Russell, and then Chris wrote so much under both, and so there hasn't been sort of not an outsider, well, maybe there should be an outsider, but anyway, there hasn't been sort of a new person.
A complete all change.
Yes. So, they all obviously put their own spin on things, but that was interesting, and certainly Richard, he is very invigorated by what he calls the golden age of Who here. But I guess getting ahead of ourselves. So, of course, they talk about choosing the new Doctor. We have had Bill Hartnell, we've had Pat Troughton, we've had John Pertwee, who, the video makes a point of, like, John Pertwee sort of made Doctor Who the institution. And so now we're going to pass it on, which is obviously big things to fill. Who are we going to go with? And what did you sort of think of that discussion of choosing the new actor?
Yeah, it was interesting. I found it interesting that they had cast the companions first, sort of. At least in terms of...
Well, you already had Sarah... Liz,
Sarah Jane's already there.
Yep.
Harry.
Yeah.
Was he already there?
I guess. I mean, because arguably they said that the idea was that they were going to cast an older doctor.
That's,
he wasn't there in the show yet.
Right, that's what I meant.
His first episode was Tom Baker's first episode, but sounds like they cast him first
because they were thinking they were going to cast an older doctor, and so Harry could be the younger
Ian.
He specifically makes that analogy of the hero, quote unquote, which Ian had come straight from hero-dom.
Yeah, Lancelot.
Yeah. Hero-dom.
Yep.
Can we make that a word?
Sure.
So trying to repeat that, but then of course they got Tom Baker, who was not... How old was he?
I don't know. He couldn't have been that old.
No. I mean, you think of Peter Davison as being
28 or 29.
Yeah, really
so
young.
Even probably, I assume late 30s, but I'll look it up while we're talking.
Yeah. So that's an interesting idea. And then, of course, then they had to oust poor Harry eventually. But he talks about the chemistry between them, which I found interesting. The two men... butting heads and things like that. I just find that an interesting concept and would have been interesting to watch. And says that we don't see it really again until Rory comes into the TARDIS.
Yeah, I like that as a sort of a comparison of that.
I did too. Mm-hmm. I thought that was really interesting.
He's born in 34.
Okay.
And he played it, well, that's easy, I guess, 40.
So 40.
Yeah, Tom Baker was 40. So, there you go. So I could be playing the Doctor soon.
Absolutely. I see no impediment to that plan.
I mean, I'm not on a work site, but I'm similar, could be there.
Absolutely, yes.
And so, next thing you know, your ticket's punched. Well, I thought it was interesting how, and we sort of heard two versions of the story, but maybe it's the same story, of how they chose Tom. Because it sounded like they were really going through a long list, as the BBC always does, or, producers or whoever. And it was interesting, the different names that Richard Carrier goes through in the video. David Warner was the one that sort of popped out at me, but that they were either not interested or not available, which I think is interesting, because I think there's a lot of people who'd be like, oh, you'd be great for Doctor Who. Some of these actors might be like, TV, I'm not really.
Yeah.
And of course, you're locked in, not necessarily for a specified time, but for a time. And
yes, although I don't know what their filming period is. Because I get the feeling, certainly with New Who, the filming period is not incredibly onerous.
Right.
I feel like you can do a show like Doctor Who and still be doing other things.
It seems like, I don't know, but it just seems like with New Who, it's just hectic filming, but then it's just like for 3 months. I'm making this up.
Yeah,
for 3 months.
3 or 4 months.
And then it's in the bank, and then it'll air a year from then, and then, you're free to do other things.
Yeah. So, and again, that sort of is my feel from New Who, and whether that was the case with Old Who.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I'd have to figure out how many episodes, because it sounded like they were doing it like a week-long rehearsal, or a week-long production is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
But I could be wrong. Could be a lot longer than that. But yeah, it was. But I thought it seemed to me that this was sort of the first, for lack of a better word, unknown actor they went with. With Bill Hartnell.
Although, interestingly enough, Tom Baker had loads of theater experience, loads of experience as a performer. At his time of casting, he was doing a side hustle.
Right.
But he's got the chops, certainly. Just not the name recognition, necessarily.
And he sort of played... And I guess, he had I can't remember the movies that were referenced, but it's for like a wizard role and then a Rasputin role, which I guess were similar, really, when you think about it. Interesting that that's what attracted them, I guess I could see it, the Doctor and, magical power, or,
there's the sort of fantasy genre, at least.
But it almost comes more as a villain than as a hero, but
yes.
yeah. But I guess if they were going for an anti-hero, I don't know if they used those terms back then, but I could see that. Because the Doctor sometimes can be that.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, because I just imagine, they, with Bill Hartnell, it's the old guy from the movies, Pat Troughton, comedy background, John Pertwee from radio and comedy, and then Tom Baker's The Sky. Who not necessarily didn't have a comedic background, so it seemed like they were finally trying to verge away from the, because
just now for something completely different.
Right, and so, and because with every Doctor, you want to do what you haven't done before. And so what's the opposite of the Third Doctor and John Pertwee? Which, of course, that's the danger with everything, because it's very successful franchise at this point. And so everything's always going to be scary.
Yes, and the suggestion
Let's change everything.
Some people were like, this is terrible. My child hates him. And then other people were like, yes, perfect. Which we see still today.
Mm-hmm. And of course, going back to what I said earlier, Richard Carrier sort of dubs this the golden age of Who, or at least I'll go classic Who. He didn't make that distinction, but I will. And I don't know whether I agree or not, because I still digest. I've sort of going around my second round of classic Who. So the first time, I've sort of done all the first time except for the Third Doctor, which we're doing together. So I know who everyone is. I know who all the player is. I sort of haven't sat down and thought, well, I guess in our earlier episodes when we rank the Doctors. But, I don't know what I think
Once
the best.
we've done this deep dive, we should go back and...
Right, rank them again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious, because we are doing our Third Doctor watch, not even a rewatch, it's a watch. It'll be curious whether this is a Third Doctor watch or this just turns into just watching Doctor Who until we hit the end.
Yeah. I might need a break. I might need to go back to Matt Smith for a little while once we get finished with Pertwee. Although I'm enjoying the one we're watching now.
Yes,
so.
The Mind Robber is what we're currently in. So, and the Richard struggled, admittedly, to find sort of because for all of his videos, he kind of picks one or two episodes that kind of encapsulate the Doctor's period, and he said he struggled with this one because he loves them so many.
Them all, yes.
Yes, but he ended up picking, or at least one of the ones he ended up picking, was Genesis of the Daleks. Now, we were lucky enough to see that in the theaters. That was one of the Fathom Events production. So what did you sort of think of that pick, now since you have seen it, and how that shows the Fourth Doctor and his folks? Because it's his first season, because Harry's still there, that's how you know. So...
Right. And I'll be honest, I don't have a whole lot of memory of Harry in it. Vaguely. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's interesting. And I think it's an important one in the Dalek canon, certainly. Mm-hmm. And also it's one of the few, in my mind anyway, and you can correct me if you want to, where at least with the old Who, classic Who, where we get the real conundrums. Do I have the right to do this? Do I have the right to make this choice? And this, of course, ultimately comes to head with Matt Smith. When they talk about doctor means warrior.
Right.
In so many languages, because he's done so much that can be seen as oppressive.
Right. In
his history. And
the lonely god.
Yes. And this is one of the first places where we get to see that. And maybe again, on Leela's planet? Yes. That's probably another example of when it turns out that the evil is...
Oh, yes. When he has in the episode we've never seen, I visited there earlier, fixed their computer, and then when he comes back, by the way, the computer's now, taking over everything.
Bad guy doctor.
Yes.
And so again, feeling the repercussions of his actions.
The face of evil, if I'm saying that correctly.
Yeah. Yes. So yeah, I think this is the first time we get that as a conundrum.
The moral quandary.
And it's an interesting one. Mm-hmm. And we'll follow him all the way through, because I think it, has to. When you're 1,000 years old, the actions that you've taken reverberate.
Mm-hmm. Any other aspects from the video that popped out at you? Because I don't know. I mean, oddly enough, I don't know how much of the Fourth Doctor stuff you've actually seen, but what did you sort of think?
Yeah, is this the one that we watched where you get that little snippet of an interview with Chris Chibnall?
Yes.
That was kind of cool.
Yes, yeah.
A very, very young Chris Chibnall.
Nerdy.
And very nerdy, bless his heart. Mm-hmm. But, yeah. Again, the foreshadowing.
Yes. Yeah, because I think, Tom Baker obviously was the longest in the TARDIS. So, I was going to say for good or ill. I mean, you can say he was there too long, but there's a lot of good there, at the beginning at least, even if not at the end. Because I think Richard talks about the fact that he rewatching the last series, which just came out on Blu-ray, for those interested, he thought was better than he remembered.
Okay.
That last series of his. So.
Where he was unhappy.
Right, and looked old.
Okay.
Well, it looked sickly,
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's definitely much more spacey. The stories are more sci-fi, than sort of the...
Not as much of the historical stuff, and certainly, and that's, again, the pendulum swing from the Pertwee years.
Right.
Of
Stuck on
Earth,
yeah.
and lower budget, so I think it's a natural pendulum to sort of go the complete opposite direction, although... again, my favorites are always going to be sort of the historical, the more fantasy-based.
And then it was interesting to hear Richard talk about the fact that sort of all the different producers, because you had, I'll get names wrong, you sort of had the Barry Letts era, leaving. Then you had, Phillip Pencliffe, and, I can't remember the other name, I'm sorry, I know these are all important people. For the large era there of the Fourth Doctor, and then, of course, you had JNT, John Nathan Turner, coming in at that last series and shaking things up, for good or for ill, and sort of telling Tom, no, you're just actually going to do what I say. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah, and that's something we can talk about a little later on in terms of Tom Baker's role as Doctor Who, both on stage and off.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it'll be interesting to revisit these Fourth Doctor stories because obviously there's so many. But yeah, I think there's a lot to, because as the video says, there's a lot of genres,
Yes. Yeah.
So for good or for ill.
Right. Let's talk about this interview.
Yes, and so what we also watched is sort of a companion piece. Doctor Companion, get it?
High five.
Yep. It's a interview with said Doctor Tom Baker. Tom Baker in Confidence, an interview from 2010. Interviewed by apparently a schoolmate of his, a drama schoolmate of his, Lori Taylor. And so I enjoyed watching your face during this whole interview.
Yeah. Boy, Tom Baker's a little...
Something? Extra?
Extra.
As the kids say.
Yes. Incredibly self-indulgent, isn't he?
Yeah. Yes. It's interesting, the more I watched him, and I'll explain where I'm going here, but I thought, is he just the UK's Bill Shatner? And I say that, as a Star Trek person, they're completely different. I mean, they're not that similar other than the ego, but they're sort of parallel personalities.
In terms of this iconic role
Yes.
that has given them that ego that they continue to,
and they're both
siphon off of.
And they're both performers in a strictest sense. Because Bill Shatner's always hustling, and Tom Baker's sort of hustling, mostly just being the Doctor, but that's fine. But it does strike me that Tom Baker, though, is a little more educated. Is not the right word, though that too, but a little more erudite, a little more.
I was going to say
because he's actually self-aware of how terrible he is, or of how arrogant he is.
He seems to be at times,
but that's because he's living in his own world.
Yes. Oh boy, yes. Wow.
Because I know you're always a passive watcher, and so watch you on your phone, and Tom begins like, "Yes, I'm a god, and they're worshipping me. Yes, they'll come for their sacrifice, as all gods must do." And you're like looking up from your phone, like, "Yeah, you're gonna pay attention to this one, aren't you?"
Oh my Lord! Yes, these are words that actually tumbled from his lips, and I just yeah. But it's also, for me, as a performer. That's not my bag.
Right.
That is not, you know, and I don't know. There's a combination of it, but people say, you know, there are two types of actors: the person who wants to get up on stage so everybody will look at them,
Right.
and the person who gets up on the stage so they can be another person.
Right.
So, you know, almost the polar opposite. And I am not a look at me kind of person. And Tom Baker is very much a look at me kind of person. And so I find that disconcerting.
Right. Well, hard to work with, obviously.
Yes, apparently.
But you know, I obviously I think he would have, well, you know, if you can get through the clouds of Mount Olympus, I mean, I think he would have interesting thoughts, because again, he comes from a philosophy, literally, of how he would view things. What's the story? What's the theme? What am I doing? You know, of course, he says he himself is not a great actor, or at least that he's a performer.
Yeah.
And I think that's, again, self-aware. He's not, you know, because the interviewer is like, well, you know, don't you wish people remembered you in this performance and that performance and not just Doctor Who? He's like, no, I mean, that's who I am, you know.
Yeah, and maybe that's the other side of it for me as a director. Oh my God, what a nightmare. What a nightmare.
Well, of course, you know, we're seeing him now, who's been the Doctor now his whole life. So it'd been interesting, because we could talk this maybe a little bit about Jon when we did the third Doctor, but, you know, how long did that take for him to be like, where he literally says, no, I know the character better than the writers and the producers and the directors. You know, maybe that was like the third episode, but I think I would assume it probably took a little bit longer than that, though I'm sure by then that was, you know, not fun. But, you know.
But that's also not always the point.
Yeah.
You know, directors aren't brought in to be the experts.
Right.
They're brought in to see the bigger picture.
Right.
And if you've got one person on your soundstage who thinks they know what should be happening because they're playing one part of that big picture.
He's the Richard Schiff of the, yeah. But yeah, and so, you know, Tom just lives in his own world, and oh Lord, did the church mess him up? So that was, you know, and I don't begrudge him that it was not a positive experience.
Yes, I again though, I mean, he
speak to people's childhood.
Yes, no, and you're absolutely right, but he went so far. I just find it interesting that somebody who spent, what did he say, 4 years in a monastery?
Yeah, maybe even longer, but yeah. 6
to
years,
then have that, I couldn't remember if it was 4 or 6, to then have that absolute break is very interesting.
Yeah, so.
And to have such a vitrolic break.
Yes.
I mean,
yeah, vivid. Yeah, it did not surprise me that he was quoted as a Chris Hitchens fan. Because I was like, no, I'm picking it up. Yeah. Of course, I don't even, you know, Douglas Adams kind of had that a little bit too. So
yeah. And again, it doesn't bother me so much, but the vitriol with which he spoke was...
And like, I was talking to a priest, I tried not to get too close because it disgusted me.
Yeah,
you know,
that sort of thing.
Yes.
You know, and again, I get it. There is so much that has been a damaging force in organized religion for a lot of people, and so I understand. I guess it just, I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't, maybe this is...
We pray for you, Tom.
Maybe the problem is I don't understand where his fury comes from. You know, it doesn't seem like organized religion.
I guess marrying Richard's video with this interview, and again, maybe, you know, this is just based on two sources, I would... Definitely going to read the autobiography one of these days, which sounds like a trip and a half. I like how Richard's like, I can't even describe it, just read it. But it sounds like his experience in the Catholic monastery or Catholic school or the Catholic church or whatever in the 60s or whatever it was, 50s or whatever it was. Basically like, you're nothing. That's all he heard. And then it sounds like, after, decades later, as being Tom Baker now, it's like, no, I was something and you were wrong and I hate you.
And actually,
Yes,
not only am I something,
I'm actually a god.
I'm actually a god. So there you go.
So, yeah.
Yeah, fun times. Fun times.
I'd love to know what his wife is like.
Oh, yeah.
I was doing the quick wiki. I can't remember her name. She was a line producer. Anyway, she worked on the show. So, not an actor, but like a whatever. So, he already did the actor wife. But no, this is more of the stuff. So, it just would have been interesting of how, because she's been with him, for a good time now. Right. So, yeah. And then his children, because apparently, again, this is Wikipedia, so not the most full thought out source, but it sounds like estranged relationship between the two kids.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Between the two kids or between the kids and their dad?
Yes, that's what I meant.
Between the kids and their dad. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because it sounded like, it just said, I think his wiki said, like, he accidentally bumped into one of his sons in a bar or pub or something, and that sort of, oh, I guess we should talk again or something. I don't know. So, yeah.
Fun. Now I really want to read the autobiography.
And they were really pushing this part about him being the voice of Little Britain. You'd have more to say about that than I do.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that he kept pushing on was doing something like the narrator of Little Britain gave him the freedom to say terrible things about people, and then they'd laugh. Mm-hmm. And that was fun.
Yeah, he has simple needs, darling.
I guess. So the idea that he could, go speak at someone's retirement party and be like, yeah, he's kind of an asshole, and everybody has to laugh because he's pretending it's a joke. I don't know.
I'm very interested in reading. Tom Baker wrote a Scratchman, is that what it is? But anyway, he has a book out about a Doctor Who story that he wrote.
Oh, right.
And it is actually idea he and, I can't remember his real name, I'm sorry folks, you can yell it at me at the podcast, but Harry Sullivan, he and Harry, when they weren't filming, would talk about, ideas, pitching stories, and this is sort of the idea that came from this, and so now it's out after all these years, because I guess they tried to shop it around or blah, blah, blah. Huh. So it ended up being just... And so I'd be interested because, it'd be interesting because it may be a first-person Doctor story, which is very interesting. Yeah. And, of course, who knows the Doctor better than the Doctor?
Yeah. According to Tom Baker, no one knows the Doctor better than Tom Baker.
And so, yeah, it'll be... I'm looking for... I still have Cricket Men by Douglas Adams that I want to read first before I start buying new Doctor Who books.
Oh,
but
anyway.
got
stacks,
darling. Yeah. So, anyway... Well, yeah, they're all calling for you, darling.
I know.
Read me.
Read me, Seymour.
So let's go through the nuts and bolts, a little bit of the Fourth Doctor era. I know you're not familiar with all of them, but we'll just kind of go through them as much as we can. So Sarah and Harry. Harry only lasted first time, but then we sort of Sarah Jane Smith, sort of his... I don't know. I'm trying to think, if you had to, and I know when we start doing the multi-Doctor specials, it's sort of like who's sort of the companion for the Doctor. So, Jo Grant is the sort of the third Doctor companion. So I'm trying to think if Sarah Jane is the fourth Doctor. Because I know Sarah Jane is popular, and so maybe, yes, but, I think Leela got a season, Romana got a season.
Yeah, I think it's a difficult...
Years End does do it.
He has a lot of iconic companions.
Right.
When you think about the first Doctor... It's the first set of companions.
Right.
When you think about the second Doctor, Jamie. And then the third Doctor, as you say, Jo Grant. But the fourth Doctor just has so many. And so, Sarah Jane's always going to be my favorite. But as you say, Leela, Romana, Nyssa and Tegan, they're all... pretty iconic. Nyssa and Tegan go together in my mind. Yep. But...
Don't forget Adric.
Well, yeah.
May he rest in stars pieces.
Sheriff Adric.
That's right.
But, so yeah, I don't know who his...
K9,
Love K9. But I don't... Yeah, he wouldn't necessarily be in... Harry and K9 and Adric don't necessarily hit me as quite as iconic.
Yes.
Yeah. as the ladies do in this. But...
Yeah, I'd be interested. I mean, not for the obvious reasons, but Leela has always been a fascinating companion for me. So I'd be interested to revisit some of her stories.
Mostly the outfit, though, isn't it?
Well, it's not all, but I mean, because I think it's you can think like, oh, it's a one note, which is sort of an opposite one note. It's the warrior. It's the quote unquote savage, which of course isn't a great term to use nowadays. But anyway, the concept of that, and then they always use the Pygmalion analogy.
Yes, yeah.
Which I don't know. I mean, maybe it is, and I just don't get it. But I've never saw that necessarily that Leela was really picking up a lot from the time, other than like not to stab everyone. I think that was pretty much what he was trying to teach her.
Be less stabby.
Yeah.
An important lesson that we all need to learn sometimes.
Exactly. But I think it'd be interesting to go back and see some of her stories because she is very obviously action-packed, sort of a pre-Ace, if you will. Mm. I can't really think of because I think of every companion ever, of an action companion per se. I mean, Sarah Jane's, but she's not necessarily like action-y. I mean, she's doing stuff, but
she is less
Leela's
damsel
actively
in distress,
like trying to kill people.
Yeah,
being
like, more stabby.
Yes, like Ace is trying to explode people. So yeah, I think that's an interesting notion. You sort of have this Buffy the Vampire Slayer companion. So yeah,
and a lot of non-human or certainly non-contemporary.
That's right. Yeah, I mean,
with Leela and Romana and Nissa.
Technically, only Sarah and Harry were from Earth.
Tegan.
That's true.
Yeah.
Maybe in Australia though. So.
Right. Oh yeah. No. Fair enough. So
right.
Just Sarah and Harry.
So yeah.
Oh, so Nissa. I was thinking.
And she's a princess and
yes,
trackers of I can't remember.
Yeah,
keepers of trackers.
No, you're right.
Something.
I was thinking Victorian, but that's
Victoria. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, not one of the most diverse groups in terms of origin stories.
And I guess, and then maybe this is a lazy comparison, but I think the New Who comparison is 10th Doctor, who was there for a while, but he had three major companions. So you can sort of know all those eras. Of course, they're a little more combined as the stories. But, you can sort of think,
Or if you count Captain Jack.
Well, yes, yeah, there you go.
So, yeah, absolutely.
Or at least the Rose era, the Martha era, the Donna era.
Yeah. Yes, yeah. Interesting, I was looking up salaries for Doctor Who for doctors. Okay. Just out of this is sometimes what I do. Uh-huh. And David Tennant got paid by far the most. Okay. Like lots and lots the most. Mm-hmm. And it was a big deal when it was discovered that Jodie was coming in making the same thing that Peter Capaldi made. Okay. Which is certainly a reasonable expectation, but not always the way things work. Right. Yeah, because there's sort of and of course, this is what tends to hurt women, but it's sort of I don't know how the BBC works, but I'm always told with the entertainment industry, it's basically what you've earned the past on your prior work. Yes. Yeah. That's how they curve it. And that's the starting point of the negotiation. Yeah. So if you're coming up hot, then you're going to get hot money. If you're coming out from not working a lot, then you're going to get not working a lot. Which I assume, I'd be interested who got paid the least. I don't know. Because I figure Matt might have. I mean, I'm not doing that for a fact. Possibly, just being literally young. Yes, and yeah, the least experienced out of the group at the time of hiring. Right. But yeah. But at the same time, Tennant got all the money. Of course, it can't be just experience because then Peter would have been the richest person there. Yes. Yeah. But I guess yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I thought so. So there you go. Sure. So yeah, and I guess this is an unfair question to ask you without you having watched all of it, but there's the did Tom Baker stay too long question, as he is the FDR of Doctor Who. He died while he was on Doctor Who. Yes. Didn't you see when he fell off the radio telescope? Was he in bed with his mistress? Well, I think the kids were around him, so right. They were behind the couch. It's fine. Then there was the Watcher. So the less said, the better. Really. I think yes. Yeah. Partly because it made him crazy. Yes. And also, again, when you get to the place where you've got new showrunners and directors coming in, and you want to be the one in charge, you've been there too long.
Also, and this now struck me, and I'm sure there's a logical answer, but like in New Who, when there was a showrunner transition, there was a new doctor. Where that is not the case at all in Classic Who.
Right.
You just have producers in and out, and then we're still got the same cast. Whereas, okay, we're going to give it over to Moffat, you get the 11th Doctor, we're going to hand it over to Chris, you get the 13th. And so you literally get, well, not literally, figuratively in some sense, because you have some companions that might stay, but figuratively you have a clean slate. You know, you can do now what you want, versus like, here's the actor who's been there for 5 years, good luck with that. So yeah, it did make me wonder about, like, if, for instance, if Tom had left a year earlier, and then when J&T took over, he got his new Doctor, the 5th Doctor, whether that still would have been Peter Davison or not, what that would have been like.
Yeah.
Versus having to, like, beat Tom and Senseless, and then, so,
Yeah.
Now, what'd you think? I didn't write this one down. This is the Tom Baker era started I guess it's sort of, in many ways, but part of the classic Doctor Who story is, what's-her-face, the crazy old lady. Mary, everything's too violent.
Oh, right. Oh, yes, the censorship lady.
Yes.
Yeah, good times.
Yeah, because that's started, and I know all the British people know that person. But anyway, that sort of started in this era, and so would kind of stay with Doctor Who for a while. I think we're going to hear about it, if not with the 5th Doctor, I think with the 6th Doctor too. So that's sort of, I don't know. We'll find out. Richard Carrier will tell us in his videos. But I'm not saying that contributed to the death of Doctor Who, but was part of the bigger pie.
Yes. And of course, this is a time when that's a thing.
Because we're
not quite to the Tipper Gore? Wasn't Tipper Gore?
Yeah, that's not until the 90s.
No, that's what I mean. We're not quite there, but we're starting this whole let's have much more control, rock music makes them go crazy kind of era.
And I assume, again, I'm assuming, because I'm not British and not, 50 years old, but, soon we're going to hit the Thatcher age. Things get a little bit more small c, as well as big C, I suppose, conservative. So, what does that mean for Doctor Who? And, of course, this same time that they were saying in the video is also the time of explosion of sci-fi, quality sci-fi. I mean, not, I don't know how else to phrase that. But where you have...
high budget.
Yes. Yeah, in a way. I don't know how much Battlestar Galactica, but anyway, Battlestar Galactica, most American, but not necessarily so. But Star Wars...
Well, and the discussion of the BBC being a public broadcasting, for all intents and purposes, a socialized program. And so it doesn't have adverts, so it doesn't get any money from adverts. The money from the BBC comes straight, literally, out of people's pockets when you pay for your television license. Right. And so... They
have a say.
They not only have a say, but it means that the revenue is much more fixed, whereas Star Trek... had advertisers, and you can charge for that, and then you can raise the rates for that, and all of those sorts of things, that you can generate much more revenue for budgetary purposes. And so the Americans were then coming out with science fiction that had a greater budget and therefore high quality effects.
Sure. So yeah. So, any closing thoughts on the 4th Doctor / 4th Doctor era?
We haven't even started watching any of the episodes, and I'm already exhausted. That's my thought.
Yes. Yeah, it's one of those interesting things of knowing more about Tom. Does it make it more difficult to watch him as the Doctor, or can you take it away, or That's like I have a hard time being excited about anything involving Jim Kirk, because Shatner's just gone for me. He's off my list. So, but.
So then, can't you embrace Chris Pine?
He has pretty eyes, so I guess so.
He does have nice eyes. Yeah. He's sort of middle of the pack as far as Chris's go.
Yeah.
But So.
We were obviously Chris Evans. Household.
Oh, yeah, we're totally a Chris Evans household.
Yeah, so we just want to be clear on the record about that.
I'm guessing, though, that you probably rate Chris Pratt higher than I do.
I don't know. I was trying to think. I don't know. Well, I don't know what we're basing this on, and then this turns into another podcast. So
It does. We'll save it for once we've turned the mic off.
Exactly. And for that, we will go into the TARDIS library.
Whoosh, 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 whoosh.
When you close your eyes,
I go to the library.
go to the library now.
So we thought we would tackle we're sort of on a YouTube adventure here, and I had sort of, as I want to do, have found things in the past. But
We
I thought,
went right down a rabbit hole, is what you're saying.
yeah, but I've seen it before, so I thought, let's just actually do this. And this is Dead Ringers, which is sort of a popular BBC, both TV and radio comedy series. But for TV purposes, it ran from 2002 to 2007. And, of course, it did a lot of parody, but we, of course, watched all the Doctor Who ones. Sort of, if I'm saying his name correctly, Jon Culshaw, very, good impressionist, did all the fourth and third Doctor, sort of his bailiwick, though he's done some others as well. So what did you sort of think of the different Doctor Who parodies?
Yeah, no, I thought they were a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Got a little weird there. People have too much time on their hands, as a general rule.
Well, I was trying to think, and this is going to be a dumb question, but I'll ask anyway. What is their SNL? Or is there one?
No, not like that.
Because it seems... Well, no, I was going to say sketch comedy's gone, but I mean, sort of Little Britain and all that stuff.
And Catherine Tate
yeah.
and things like that. Yeah, but it's not...
I just think all panel shows is where most of the comedy is nowadays, but...
Yeah, and it is in a lot of places. Mm-hmm. But, those... I don't know. There's nothing quite as finely tuned as SNL. Right. And as iconic. They sort of get things that come up and then disappear, and then come up and disappear, and things like that.
Why did Monty Python never do a Doctor Who sketch?
Are we positive they didn't?
I don't know. I feel like they did, but I will have to double check.
Yeah.
I feel like that would be out there.
That would be fun.
Both literally and figuratively.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we do have the Monty Python characters occasionally showing up.
That's true.
Hashtag John Cleese.
Yeah, they're in Fourth Doctor era, as we were talking earlier.
Yeah.
So, City of Death. But yeah, and then I think I can't have his name. I don't have his name in front of me. I'm sorry. But the young man who's on the Time team nowadays, John, we saw him in person, who did the 11th Doctor and 10th Doctor, who actually is doing the 11th Doctor for Big Finish now. The young man who does that impression.
Oh, the little guy.
Yes.
The young guy.
Josh.
I don't know.
I want to say his name's Josh.
Yeah,
anyway,
that sounds right.
He's very popular. I just can't remember his name a second.
Very good.
Yes. But it was very interesting to see him and John sort of, reenacting the 50th anniversary with the caretaker.
Oh, was that him?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't. Oh,
that was
you've
the whole
got
point.
to tell me those things.
Yeah, with Tim playing the caretaker, aka using his Tom Baker voice, and then him doing his 11th, and then it flashed to John doing the 3rd Doctor, and then Josh doing the 10th Doctor, which they're both play with those characters as well. So
yeah,
I thought that was interesting.
Was funny.
Yeah,
that was good.
Do you remember any other? Because I know I always ask you this, and the answer is no. But do you remember any Doctor Who pop culture references, or did you not even recognize them for what they were? Probably
when we were watching or
in life
whilst I was. Yeah, no, because again, I didn't have that connection. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, you had the Children in Need, or Red Nose Day, or whatever it was with Catherine Tate. But other than that, not so much.
Yeah. So yeah, a lot of these sketches are short. They're actually really short. It could have been longer. But yeah, it's good, nice thing to go on YouTube and look up Dead Ringers if you haven't seen it before. I think I enjoyed. I think you enjoyed too the Torchwood one.
Poor Gwen.
I didn't get to see everyone's labels because the quality was a little low in our YouTube, but she just labeled Welsh.
Yes, they were all having to wear their character traits as name tags, and Gwen's was just that she was Welsh.
But then John was still playing Captain Jack, and he just was doing his sachet walk.
Yeah. Yes, which made me giggle.
And it's interesting. I don't know. I'm not a prank call person that enjoys that, but there are a lot of those of him pretending to be various Doctor Who people and calling Doctor Who actors pretending to be people. So that's also something else to check out if you haven't seen that as well.
If that's your bag.
Yeah, if that's your bag.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, until next week, we hope you enjoy watching, listening, and reading about the Doctor's adventures throughout time and space.
This is BBC Television.